Hey everyone, welcome to an all new episode of TV Dinners, the podcast where we feed your entertainment soul. It's Valentine's Day. Sure, most people are aware, but hey, just because I don't have any secret admirers doesn't mean that you don't. I secretly admire everybody out there, so just consider this my virtual Valentine's Day hug to you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we are actually going to talk about romantic tropes. I'm kind of excited about it because, wow, there are a lot. And the more research that I did for the number of different romantic tropes, the more I was kind of amazed that we have subdivided this category as messily as we have. It's crazy. But we'll get into that in a second. Uh for the moment, first let me introduce my guest tonight, and then we are going to talk some TV news. I am joined tonight with by Betty, who hasn't been on the show for a long time, but used to be a regular. So welcome back, Betty. Very happy to see you. How are you?
Thanks. Happy to be back. Doing
Uh,
well.
Still traveling? Yes.
I am not. I'm actually staying with family waiting for immigration to give me an answer.
Ooh, and exciting. Well, that part is really exciting. I mean, is there anything of romantic news that you want to share with the class?
Yes, I am married and I am waiting. The thing I'm waiting for immigration is so I can go to live with my wife in Scotland.
Yay! Congratulations! See,
Thank
this is the
you.
kind of news that's like the good lead off news, right? A
Yeah,
wedding, an engagement, something. This is really exciting.
I had to do the paperwork yesterday to prove that I am in a relationship with my wife.
Oh,
They have,
like, did you have to send pictures or something?
like, I had to write out a story
Oh
and
my
they put
god.
pictures with the story, and then I had to send my flight tickets, her flight tickets,
Wow.
and then her mother wrote a letter to say that the marriage is real, things like that, and then like we had to show that we our friends and family met each other and things like that, and I
Wow.
had to say why I wanted to marry her, and so I was like, "Am I cheap if this is your Valentine's Day gift?"
This amazingly is feeling a bit like some kind of other sitcom where kind of like a reverse sitcom almost. I mean, we could really make something out of this. This could be actually pretty cool. You should document everything.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll start doing that.
Hey, I can just imagine immigration when you say, "So here's my TikToks," and I'm sure they're going to be super thrilled.
That was my first sentence. Little did I know when I saw her on TikTok.
Well, the big news, other than Betty getting married, which of course is, bigger, preeminent news than any of the other news that I could come up with this week, but the big news this week in TV is the Super Bowl with Rihanna. Now, I don't know if anybody out there saw the Super Bowl halftime game, but okay. Let me give you a little quick take from my perspective. After the Super Bowl halftime, all of a sudden, because everybody wants to rush to write things, right? They started writing things like, where was the art direction? This was just sort of like, bunch of messy choreography. And I, I was sort of blown away. Let me tell you why. Okay. Rihanna clearly, if through nothing else than visual imagery, showed us that she was pregnant, right? You could see that she was pregnant. You could see it. She comes in from this platform above. She's the only one dressed in red, and she is surrounded by a bunch of dancers that are white with kind of wiggly sort of costumes. Yeah, you see where I'm kind of going here? I mean, if that wasn't the perfect sort of visual
Visually, yeah,
imagery
like visually
for
striking.
It was absolutely the sperm and the eggs. Come on. I mean, how did you all not see that? Really? Really? So, the sometimes this is just me personally, right? But sometimes I read things about what performers have done, and maybe it's just that like I'm so used to seeing into things that I do see more visual imagery maybe than most people do. I don't know. But it really is kind of offensive to me that the idea that a performer would go into Super Bowl halftime and not have a really strong art direction is um I don't know. It's is sort of sad. Um and it's not just sad, but well, let me ask you, Betty, did you watch the Super Bowl halftime at all?
I did not. I just saw a bunch of pictures calling them marshmallows.
Oh God. See, I don't even understand that. I can't understand how people didn't see that the group of white, all dressed in white performers were not that visual imagery. Even the way that they moved was like them swimming around her.
So basically, this was like a birth announcement.
It kind of was, and but you know what else I felt like it was? I felt, and look, I don't care if other people didn't see this. I saw it as the one of the better visual and strikingly visual narratives of this is femininity, right? This is female empowerment. I mean, every song that she chose was, and okay, let's be real. Rihanna sings very empowered songs, right? I mean, her songs are straight to the point. I mean, you can they are extremely frank songs,
And
and they're
the Black
excellent,
Panther song is amazing.
and they're excellent for that. I mean, you know, they're just really good. And if you're a woman and you're watching this lady up there commanding the kind of performance that she was commanding, look, I don't understand how you can possibly see that and not see something really amazing. Now, one of the this is going to be so sad. One of the things that I heard that was a criticism was that her performance was lackluster, that she wasn't bringing her A game. And I totally disagree. First of all, to get up there on a platform that is suspended high above, really high above the ground while you are pregnant is a huge leap of faith, if you will. And it really kind of it's there is a confidence level here that is just off the charts. I don't really understand why people can see a female performer and say, well, I do understand, but I wish I didn't have to understand. This wasn't good. I wish that they had done this. And sometimes underneath that, you know what I hear? I hear, well, there weren't enough naked female bodies out there for me to
Yeah.
enjoy. And that's what was sort of missing because people complained about how much the costumes covered everybody up and and it just felt to me like, well, okay, go watch porn if that's what you want. This is supposed to be a really strong musical presence for the Super Bowl. So anyway, it really this particular thing really got to me this week because I really felt like, man, when you're a woman, sometimes you can't, even when you bring your A game, even when you're doing the best of the best, you just can't cut a break. And it felt to me like that's exactly what was happening there. So to everybody else out there that enjoyed the halftime performance, solidarity, because it was good. I had a really good time with it.
Well, how much do you
Um,
think was the female empowerment and a strong woman in the type of audience that watches the Super Bowl?
Well, this is also this. I think that this is also sort of the situational piece of performative, i- of having performative theater, where you're basically saying, I won't say the word, but "f you" to the world, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And this is one of those situations where it just feels like, look, you know what? If you can give people power, give people power. And I don't mean power to do horrible things. I mean,
Right.
give people power to be strong people. And that's exactly what was happening, and it's just so odd that that's the takeaway message that people got. I don't really know how to describe why that was so discomforting, except that most of the people who were writing these articles were men, and not very many women were writing those kinds of things, and that also is sort of that's a talk for another day. There are very few um there are very few writers who write about entertainment that are female anyway. And then the people who choose to criticize, especially women on stage, it just feels really disingenuous. And again, if you weren't sort of saying to the audience at large, if there wasn't enough skin, are you all old enough to remember Right Shark and Left Shark? There was no skin going on there, and everybody seemed to love that until it was, oh, that was so dumb because it was juvenile. And I mean, come on, guys, this is silly, really silly. So, okay, I'm gonna switch track. Oh, actually, I'm not gonna switch tracks. I do want to call out one thing. So during the Super Bowl, TV plays such a huge part of how we interact, right, with society, how we experience things. And of course, you're watching TV, and Tubi did the most meta commercial ever. They played a commercial that looked like you were flipping through the channels at Tubi. So people apparently were reaching for their remotes, trying to figure out how did they get to Tubi, changing the channel. It That was glorious. That was truly glorious. Um, I absolutely love that kind of marketing. I think mostly because it's just like the trick is so difficult to pull off anymore. I mean, people are so savvy about most things, and so to get one where people were actually changing the channel, that was good. So well played, Tubi. Well played. Um, I also definitely want to call out the Netflix and GM ad with Will Ferrell in it, where Will Ferrell basically went through a whole bunch of Netflix characters, played them all. It was wonderful. I really loved that. I don't know if it was really effective because honestly, I can remember Will Ferrell playing all the Netflix characters, but I don't remember much about the GM part. And so I don't know if the whole message was like super effective, but good for them that they combined. I mean, those Super Bowl ads are not cheap. That is for sure. Um, let's see. Also this week,
What
there
about the
is
M&M commercial?
well, okay. So I mean, so technically the M&M commercial isn't really like a TV commercial, but I will say, I mean, like it's not about TV, right? It's about M&Ms. But I will say one thing. Um, I feel like M&M's trolls people really well, and when people start with this, why does everything have to be so woke? Why do we have to have inclusion? Why do we have to have whatever? a- Everything that goes along with that, when companies clap back and troll those people, there is an odd satisfaction to it. And it's not that anybody is trying to like make fun of the people who are going, "Oh, but everything is so woke." It's more like the whole idea is just so petty and ridiculous. They're literally animated characters of candy you put in your mouth, people.
And people are
That
accusing them of not being sexy enough and
E exactly. Yes. Well, or saying that, the green M&M is too whatever. It's just so silly. I
well,
mean, these are the kinds of things that actually make me worried for the general progress of society as we move forward because, there
we're
there is
regressing.
Well, there is a type of anti-intellectualism that I think happens around this that is just like, oh, I mean, come on. You're arguing about cartoon characters in a commercial. This is just this is dumb. This is really dumb.
That's why it was
Um,
my favorite.
the dumb.
No,
Are you talking about?
the fact that the argument is so dumb, which is why they said something.
Oh, and to their credit, I do feel like they sort of did the right thing, which was, they took a step back. They tried to sort of organize themselves around a coherent message that you kind of just can't mess with, and they did that. And then at the end, they were like, "Surprise, everybody!
Psych.
Yeah, exactly." And that it was actually pretty good. I was really excited about that. Okay, so I do watch the Super Bowl for the commercials because, let's face it, they're just fun. Really sad that there was no, like, big Anheuser-Busch Clydesdale horses and whatever, but okay. Nostalgia aside. Um this year the game was really good. I, I mean, that was a good game. I don't know. Doesn't matter which team you were on. Well, I mean, it does if you put money on it. But I mean, honestly, both teams played so well and all the way down to the end. It was just that was a nail biter. That was a really good game. Very much enjoyed it. Um, I didn't put money on this game, so I didn't lose anything, but I also didn't win anything. So you know,
I just assumed the
uh,
Eagles would win for some reason.
that the Eagles would win.
Yes.
I was making the joke all the way through that the Eagles were not going to win because they were off helping Gandalf in Mordor, and so they probably wouldn't be.
Finally.
Yeah, right, exactly. They're finally doing something right. But it really was, honestly, it really was a good game. We also in our house had a big running joke about how we were going to try to root for Kansas City because they just had that big, huge problem with all the cordyceps, and they could probably use a break. And you'd probably only get that if you were also watching The Last of Us and you knew that the last episode of The Last of Us, these cordyceps come streaming out from everywhere. And yeah, so join us for the podcast The Last of Us on Thursday.
Yeah, that was
Uh
nuts.
More of this soon. So I don't know let me ask you, Betty, what are you watching right now? What shows are you?
I'm watching The Last of Us, and I've started rewatching Big Bang Theory. I just finished Young Sheldon, and
Ooh,
I'm also watching. Um, what was that show I told you I was watching today?
um you know what, I totally forgot what you just said. Not
Yeah,
Josh was watching uh the other one. What were you watching? I don't know. What were you watching?
I'm watching Velma, and I can't remember. It's the other apocalyptic movie.
Oh, right, the one about Shakespeare.
Yes, the Shakespearean troupe. Which it was not. It's not what I was expecting at all, to be honest.
Well, let me ask you about Velma real quick. What's your take? Because this one has everybody divided. Like,
I
divided 90-10. So,
I don't understand. I think a lot of the complaints must be coming from people who don't like the gay thing, and I don't understand why people have issues with her character liking the idiot. It's they're making fun of tropes. At the same time, some of the jokes seem to go a little too far sometimes, so I'm not really sure yet. Like
yeah,
sometimes it seems too much.
it does seem like that the reason that people are so divided is that either one, they're really not getting what I think is really deep, 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 deep sarcasm. Or two, they are viewing this through a lens that I don't think it's supposed to be viewed through. Um, that doesn't, to me, that doesn't make it any better, though. It doesn't make the show any better. And I wish I didn't feel like the show was just not good. Because I think that particular style of satirical storytelling could go really far, but I really don't like the show. I don't I
I
just
can
don't
see that. I'm
I
confused because I thought they were supposed to be a group. And are they eventually coming together to be a group?
I don't, you know what? Honestly, well, yes. The answer is yes. And it's a little bit different than I think what we expect it to be, and that also kind of threw people off. Um the number of people that revenge watched Velma is like so through the roof that, like, HBO Max is going, "Yay. Okay. So all we really have to do is just troll you hard enough and everybody will watch this, right?" And people are just like, yeah, yeah, that's basically what's going on. Wow. Sometimes I really think that people are expecting something out of entertainment that is just not there. And I don't mean that there is a vacancy in it. I mean, like, you're reading into something that isn't there. And as somebody who deconstructs
Right.
story, I'm really very aware of this. You can't read so much into a story that isn't there and then just, come up with your own rationale and reasonings for things if there isn't some kind of basis underneath it. And sometimes I think that that's what people are doing with Velma. Like,
Well,
where's all this
they're
coming
giving
from?
everyone's blaming Mindy Kaling, and from what I've heard, she's not even the head writer.
Nope. Well, like, okay, so I have mixed feelings about that particular relationship with the story, because I do think that there was enough creative input for any of them to make changes along the way that would have made this a little bit easier to digest. And I don't mean that they have to dumb it down, and I don't mean that they have to, but there are some choices in the show that just make me
But is
like,
it all on Mindy Kaling?
no, I don't think it's all on Mindy Kaling. No, because part of my problem with Velma is art direction. I don't like it.
Right.
It doesn't feel it feels weird, and it's unsettling in a way that doesn't make me want to keep watching it.
I
Um
get that. I mean, honestly, I both love and I hate the hallucinations
yeah,
because
that's a big one.
it sort of makes sense because the cartoon was trippy. At the
But it
same time, I don't really like it.
I think the thing is, and this is something that I've talked about before, sometimes we want to experience things through the lens of nostalgia, and we will go to any length to get there. But what we fail to sort of process through this is that part of the nostalgia is the lesser of creative technology. And when things begin to take on the flavor, if you will, of today technology, but they're printed for the nostalgia of a yesteryear, they stop being that. We don't identify with them the same way. And I think that this is one of the biggest problems that shows have, which is one of the reasons I will say that people like James Gunn and Mike Flanagan seem to get it a little bit more than most. If you're going to tell a story with some kind of retrospective lens, like, okay, let's tell a story about the 80s, let's tell a story about the 70s or the 90s or whatever, you have to be careful about how you are telling it. And this is Velma seems to move in the direction of, well, let's just use all the bells and whistles that we possibly can, and also ask people to remember the time when this used to be fun. And I feel like there's a disconnect there. So,
That makes sense.
um, so you know, I'm sort of struggling now with the next piece of this because, like, I want to present this in the right way, um, without making it seem like I'm not railing against anything, but I do feel like we definitely need to shout out a little bit. Some of the premiere material, the the advanced material. And I said this a couple of weeks ago or last week, I think, about Star Trek, that it was like extremely lackluster. And I've seen more now, and I still think it's lackluster. It's not. It just isn't doing for me what I thought it would do.
There's a
And
new one?
this that well, there's a new season of Picard.
Okay.
There will be a new season of Strange New World. And I do actually want to give that one a chance because although the Spock thing always sort of throws me off, I generally like it. I generally like it more because it feels like an hour that I can pay attention but not pay attention. You know, like it's entertaining, but I don't have to be looking at every single detail. It's Star Trek. And so for that reason I kind of like it. Picard on the other hand there is something wrong with bringing back every single cast member of Picard, not because they don't deserve to be back, because of course they do deserve to be back. These are all awesome people from TNG, right? They're awesome. But this doesn't make any sense. Bringing all of these people back just feels like a lazy attempt to increase audience share. And I don't know, maybe there is some other purpose, but everything that they put out for advanced material feels stilted and dull and like the scripts are, I don't know, written in sort of monosyllable. I don't like it. This is not the caliber of what I expect from any Star Trek part of the franchise, but certainly not what I expected from the first season of Picard, which really was very good. Are you watching any Star Trek at all?
I'm not.
Okay.
Just young Sheldon talking about it.
That's valid. That's actually really valid. People really love young Sheldon, by the way. For some reason that definitely it strikes a chord with a lot of people. Even people who didn't like Sheldon, the grown up character, really like the young Sheldon character. I mean, I guess it's hard not to like kids. This is, one of those
Right.
things. But there is something kind of special about what's happening there. So I give
Well, that
those.
and he acts like a petulant child, so it's maybe for some people it's easier to digest as a child.
Mm. You know, that I think that is possible. It's a lot easier to forgive a kid who behaves that way than it is to behave as that way as an adult, and then everybody around you goes, "Yeah, that's totally fine." Uh-huh. Yeah. So, yeah, maybe that is true.
Has a
Um
great cast and great guests, so I could see why it resonates with people.
it does. I think that the cast is actually the strongest thing that the show has going for it. It definitely isn't the same. Um, they tackle a lot of different issues. But I think in some ways, in a or I should say in a similar way to the way that 70s show compares to that 90s show, it feels different from the world building perspective, but it also feels different. Like, yeah, we got some same characters, but they're really doing very different things. So I'm not happy with what's going on there. I do kind of wish there was something a little bit more, but it's good. I feel like it's good. It's just plain good entertainment. Um,
Yeah, I think I do think it's one of the situations where you could get more, but you'll settle for what you have because it's not terrible.
right, right. I do want to talk just a little bit about some new information that came out a bit ago, and it has Rachel Weisz at the center. Now, if you know who Rachel Weisz is, she's amazing. She's absolutely glorious. Um,
I'm a
and
lesbian. I definitely know who she is.
she's really, yeah. Well, I'm not, and I think she's amazing.
she's
Um,
she's a big part of coming out a lot of coming out stories.
Well, uh, she is playing twins. in a Cronenberg remake of a movie, but it's going to be a series called Dead Ringers. And
Interesting.
Dead Ringers, the movie, is disturbing beyond disturbing beyond disturbing. I mean, it's Cronenberg. It's wow. Ooh, it's everything that you expect from a Cronenberg movie. But the series seems to be playing off of a different well, first of all, it is changing the gender of the lead. So the gender of the lead in Dead Ringers is Jeremy Irons, and the lead here obviously is Rachel Weisz, and it does feel a bit different. Now, heads up, the reason that Dead Ringers was so disturbing is because there are some truly evil things happening. And I don't know what they're going to do in the series specifically, but whatever it is, if it even strays slightly close to the movie path, it's going to be scary. Um, I'm really excited for this. This is going to be an Amazon Prime Video special, so it'll only air on Amazon Prime. And I don't have any
Mm.
other information on it other than just that's what's going to be happening. Um, I think that there might be something happening like later this year. Like it's going to air later this year, so they must be in post production, which is kind of exciting. Let's see. What else is happening? Is there anything else happening that's like really big TV news? A lot of news from TV, like specifically just TV, is happening around news with different strikes and walkouts and questions about fair pay. Uh, this is, I think, going to be the big news story for 2023 and into 2024. Because I don't know if everybody's aware, but writers are not happy right now. Um, and this is this is kind of a big thing. Um, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. There probably isn't really a great way to say it, but basically, there's a lot of disquiet. I don't know if we are close to strike zone, but it has felt very strikey, like in the very recent past. I feel like we sort of take this for granted. The number of writers that are out there right now writing, it, it's so big that it's almost we almost can't even fathom the depth of this. And if WGA had a strike, Writers Guild of America, if they did have a strike, it would really end, I think, production for a while at least. And this hasn't happened in a really long time. But anyway, that to me feels like sort of the undercurrent of news feels like that part. um, let's see. Is there anything else that's kind of big happening? I also, I mean, without getting into podcast territory, which is what we're going to do on Thursday, The Last of Us dominates again, with both ratings and with the number of articles printed about the show. So typically, the number of articles printed about a show is obviously free publicity for the show itself, but it's also a really good indication of our viewers actually tuning in, because for the most part, entertainment sections of any big publication will write what they believe their viewers are picking up on. And there's so much press right now out there about The Last of Us, from Bella Ramsey being non-binary, and talking about wearing a binder, which was sort of surprising, to the amount of prosthetic makeup that they had to use for some episodes, to The just the stories themselves, it's been really big. And then if you layer on top of that, the province of Alberta has basically teamed up with every set location that The Last of Us has shot in, and is sort of like live narrating, like right after the show, where they were, what it took to make these shots, how this particular piece of geography fit in. It's amazing. Even the back of the studio shots are absolutely gorgeous. So they're helping to propel this ratings giant into more giant territory. It's sort of astounding that a show can pick up viewers even after the third or the fourth episode. The third episode is generally, if it hasn't already, is when audiences will decline. And based on the amount of decline, you'll start to get a feel for where the show is going to end. But I don't think HBO Max can even begin to figure out where the show is going to end, because viewership continues to escalate. That's a big deal. That is definitely a big deal. So, that, I feel like that was really big in TV news this week. I'd also definitely want to, also let me. I feel like there's one other thing, and that's this particular piece. We are moving into sort of like a quasi spring sweep, a ratings sweep, where people are going to, streaming services are going to begin to show us, new seasons of things. They're going to roll out episodic pieces that they've been holding on to because they need to get some big ratings. Um, it feels very what's a good word for this? It feels very uncoordinated this year. Like there isn't really anything that's going to pop at a time when I feel like things need to, because rating services are sort of underplaying this idea of the rating sweep. So that's kind of sad for us, because as the audience, we generally tend to benefit a lot from rating sweep weeks, where we get all kinds of new content, and the craziest of stuff happens. And yeah, I don't think we're going to get a lot of that this year. Okay. I'm going to jump into what I lovingly have referred to now as my B block. So, won't fade to black or anything, but I want to talk today about romantic tropes. It's Valentine's Day. TV is filled with romantic tropes, and I do mean filled. And I said at the top of the podcast that I'm actually astounded at the number of tropes that we have sort of drilled down into in order to create subgenres or subtropes of tropes. And in a way, I feel like this is really good for people, because it elevates the idea that there can be so many different types of romantic love happening between characters, things that waver from platonic love to romantic love, things that build from I didn't know this to now I know everything, heartbreak and everything that's in between. There are some really awesome ideas that we keep putting out there, and then there are some really tired tropes that just never seem to get retired. I wish they would get retired, because I just don't know how much more of them I can actually watch. But let's talk a little bit about some of the big ones. And forgive me if I start off with one of my favorites, because I know this isn't everyone's favorite, but I'm going to start off with the TV trope that deals with human love. Whoops. Human love into, or phased by, non-human interaction. So I'm not talking about furries. Or Beauty and the Beast. I am actually talking about things like AI, or something that doesn't have what we would consider to be sentient uh, awareness. Um, this is definitely one of those. The reason that I love this so much is because it really requires the writers to be extremely creative about how they think in terms of telling a love story, right? It When I think about this in sort of a meta contextual way, the writers themselves have to come up with something brilliant to express to us how the character is feeling about something that is non-sentient and why that character would feel love toward it. Um and I mean, I absolutely love that piece. And I'm gonna go here with a show that I just talked about a couple of weeks ago on the Orville, where you have a character who is the doctor of the starship, and she falls in love with the android, the AI, right? And if you don't know the story of the Orville, I won't spoil everything too much, but if you think back to the character that is Data on Star Trek, you kind of get an idea of what that character is supposed to be. But in all honesty, the robot character, the android character it's not Data. It's just such a completely different type of character. And there's something so fascinating to me about having to write that. Like, why would somebody fall in love with a presence that clearly is never going to feel love, isn't going to understand it? um and it's kind of fascinating. I think that is kind of fascinating. So I'm going to ask Betty over here if she has any of those kinds of tropes that she has enjoyed watching. And we'll see what she says. What do you think, Betty?
Well, my favorite version of the AI falling in love would be Amy Farrah Fowler and Sheldon Cooper because he's obviously
Oh,
a robot.
okay. And so tell me how you feel. What do you think made that work?
I think it works because they're both insane,
Oh,
and
okay.
she was lovingly, affectionately, they both have quirks that fit with each other. And so I don't think anybody else could have been with Amy Farrah Fowler. And I definitely don't think that anyone could have dealt with Sheldon Cooper and his many faults. So she loves him as much as he loves him.
Yeah, well, and that I think is yeah, well, let's see. Let's deconstruct that for a second. So when you think about the actual trope of experiencing love between AI and human, uh, oftentimes we don't have it go the other direction. The AI never falls in love with a human, right? Like, writers always write the AI as being, "Oh no, you're not going to catch me in that, you silly human." Um, but humans always seem to fall for the AI, which does sort of beg the question: what is it that we think we're doing when we fall in love with computers? Is it the coldness, or is it just the logical thinking, or I don't know. I honestly don't. I love it. I love this idea, but I don't really always understand what it is that we think we're saying when we say, oh, no, 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 humans can totally just get beyond the idea that this AI will never feel anything for them because they'll just be dedicated to them, and that's enough. Maybe that is enough. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that maybe I'm thinking about that. The Amy, I think that she also appreciated the need to be needed by him.
Hmm.
Um, but at the same time, I think one AI that fell in love was in the Good Place, Janet. She was into Jason, right?
I I don't know if that's true.
I think at one
I
point she like fell for him, like for real,
I hmm, I don't know. I don't know.
because she was
I
trying to
mean,
get. I think she was jealous.
Yes, and there's a part of me that feels like that was Janet's construct. Like Janet's construct was something different than true AI. And I don't know how to exactly explain that except to say I don't see Janet as being the robot, the android, the I was programmed without emotion or ability to express.
But Sheldon Cooper meets the qualifications.
Yeah, in a weird way, kind of. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting.
There's also something that I think happens with this particular trope that makes me wonder what we're all thinking when we think this, and that is, you know, at some point we are going to get to this, for lack of a better phrase, singularity when it comes to robotics, right? And the AI systems that we have right now are generally going to be good enough that they will or trick isn't really a right word because it's not nefarious. It's not like there's malicious intent behind this, but AI will be so good that it will be able to mimic human behavior. Now, there will always be things I think about humans which will never sort of fit into the ability for that, but I would just like to remind everyone that humans aren't always good at detecting other humans being not good for them. And so it always makes me think that we're moving in an odd trope direction where we're trying to validate somehow the idea that humans can totally have some kind of, you know, romantic relationship with their AI, and that it can totally be okay. And I'm not saying that it can't, but I think we should be like extremely wary of that, because as a trope in our fiction, the more that we normalize this kind of stuff, the easier it's going to be when it actually happens. And it feels so much like, well, that's just science fiction and maybe it's never going to no, I don't think that that's the case. I think we are closer than we even could comprehend
That's
to
probably what some
that.
people were worried or thought about in Will and Grace.
Oh,
These
maybe.
gays on our TV.
Well, no, see, this is different. Okay, wait. Get Betty, get out of town. That is so different. What the heck? Why am I agreeing with that? That is not the same thing. The, because we don't program other people. People are not programmed. People are not created by creators. Well, I
Right.
mean mom and dad, but um there
We
is
can
no
consent as humans.
Right, and there's no direct coding that you get to, like, trust me, if there was a direct coding that you could just like upload to your kids, I would have done it because my kids were sometimes so out of control. Um so no, we don't get that. Y- but but the idea that we are creating mechanisms for us to experience what we maybe don't want to experience with another person because people are flawed, and
And
you just
terrifying.
yeah, right. I mean, I'm just saying that we should be careful. I'm not saying we shouldn't, we're going to do it no matter what. I mean, have we all seen the movie AI where you have like the pleasure androids and stuff? I, y- this is the first thing that people think of when, well, maybe not the first thing everybody thinks of, but it's definitely one of the first things that like has a kind of structural integrity to it that would make so much money. Um, Everybody who's lonely would want one. So, I mean, and
Yeah.
this is definitely the stuff of AI stories for years and years and years. So, okay, let's talk about this one. Have you ever seen a show with a December romance in it?
What is that?
December romance is, two older people. Like, generally they tend to be
Oh,
a little bit more geriatric than not, but it could be,
Grace and
somebody
Frankie.
who just looks older. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. This one always surprises me. Um The number of people that really don't like this is just really surprising. Uh, some of the responses to especially a lot of the Golden Girl episodes were, I really love it when they're funny, but I don't really want to see them kiss. Who wants
I'm
to see their
happy. I'm
Who
happy
wants
to
to
know
see
that
their
you can still
grandma
get it.
kiss?
No, I'm happy
Right.
that they can still like go out. I mean, that's the age whenever women start losing their husbands and stuff. You would hope that they'd have another chance.
There's empowerment in
Yeah.
December romances, which is very fulfilling. And I always wonder why people are so uh I don't know, out of their comfort zone about watching older people kiss. Like, if you can watch anybody else kiss, why is it that older people give you so much trouble? I don't understand that at all. And if anybody wants to fill me in on those details, please, by all means, tell me what you think. I'd love to hear it. Um, okay, let's talk about let's see for my next trope. I feel like I'm pulling rabbits out of a hat. For my next trope, let's talk a little bit about the chivalric romance. um Chivalric romances make me extremely, yes. Before I say anything, let me comment on my producer's comment, which was, weren't the Golden Girls in their 50s? And the answer is yes. But the number of people who believe that
They were a different
that
50.
that people being in their 50s is geriatric are it's big. It's actually big. I mean, nobody who is actually in their 40s looking at 50 is going, "Oh yeah, I'm geriatric." But yeah, and I, I think part of this is just, I think the December thing is that we tend to oversimplify personas in our entertainment in a way that makes the older person look caricature older. That is, they have to have gray hair, they have to have, you know, uh, wrinkles and lines, and they have to wear frocky kind of clothing. Like, this is that's sort of a trope all by itself, but that's the issue. So when you put people in that role and make them look even older than they actually are, it just creates this weird. I'll give you a good example. Everybody's fine in the Notebook, the movie The Notebook, when they're young, but as they age, it is people get less and less excited about the love story, and that is the whole point of the story, is that even at a time when they are old and can't care for themselves, they still love each other. It's such a I don't I've never understood like why there is such a pushback against that, except I think that sometimes people mistake the idea of being older for being not a person that feels any type of sexuality. And that always sort of gets me like, that's not true. And then if we layer into that the romantic part, look, people like to experience romance whether sexuality is involved or not. Romance is not always sexuality, and sexuality is definitely not always romance. So there's a nuanced conversation to be had in here for all of those things. So, um okay, so let's talk real quick about the chivalric romance. This is absolutely also one of my favorites, not just because I adore everything from the Middle Ages, but also because this one has longevity of thousands of years. Um, the chivalric romance is such a good, sort of fascinating place to be in, where you are thinking about what courtly love is. I spoiler alert, you probably are Courtly Love was probably something other than what we have made it into in media, but it's still awesome. It's the it is the putting the lady on a high pedestal, doing something above and beyond to win her affection, creating a kind of whirlwind around the person that you care about.
Jim and
Uh,
Pam.
yeah, yeah. Um,
You sounded
okay,
surprised.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that actually I think works. You don't have to be necessarily a damsel in distress, although that is oftentimes a part of this trope, right?
Right.
Where the woman is, and sometimes we throw these tropes upside down and we turn the man into, the damsel in distress by, sort of just upending everything, and then the woman comes to save him, but usually it's the other way around. And some an interesting thing I think that happens with this one is that the romance is always so one-sided in the beginning. The romance is always okay, but the guy is the one who is really invested in all of this, and he has to prove himself to the lady. And the lady is just like, yeah, maybe, okay, could be.
And
And then something big happens, and the lady's like, oh, of course, you were always my true love.
then he's like,
Um,
nah, for a minute.
The number of romance novels that I have read with this same exact premise is kind of too long to list, but it's a good trope. We clearly love it. People eat it up. I mean, you can mock it and you can make fun of it and you can go, that's so ridiculous and dated and whatever, but people
Yep.
do clearly love this one. Um, I used to have a shirt a long time ago that said, be your own knight, or be a knight, rescue yourself. Um,
Nice.
and and I did at the time, you know what? I really did feel that. That is, yeah, essentially the thing. But I also don't think that there is anything wrong in that we should shame people for wanting to sort of have that fantasy, especially in our entertainment, of being sort of uplifted and cherished in a way that probably doesn't happen in your everyday life. Let's
Yeah.
not forget that sometimes our romantic tropes, for as much as I just said, we should be careful about the last trope, or the AI trope. There is this point at which we also have to recognize that we're talking about fiction and fantasy in our entertainment, that the tropes allow us to express and experience things so far above what we would normally experience.
Well,
I'm going to go
I
ahead.
want to say my favorite is going along with this. I think the one where you know that they're both like you know where it's going. You know that they're going to end up together. They both like fall in love with each other, but the problem is like the obstacles. Like in Chuck, you always
Yeah,
know where he is, and you always know where she is.
right. It's this is the will they or won't they trope,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, because I like
Um
knowing what people are, and I like knowing that they're invested because it seems silly to me. I don't like it the miscommunication one where they're like, "Well, do they like me? Do they not like me?" And it just gets annoying after a while.
Yeah, I think a good will they or won't they trope definitely gives you two very strong characters out of the gate who have very strong opinions, but can't quite commit one way or other because there are obstacles, or because there are um, considerations, factors that, even if they're not obstacles, prevent the two from being together. And so there is this sort of like, ebb and flow continually, and there's tension between the two of them that is definitely sort of like, okay, yes, this is what I want, but no, I can't have it. And that's actually really good. Oddly, a lot of crime procedural dramas do this with their characters that are either the two main characters, or are the two main protagonists, or the people who are kind of like their support crew. you know Will the guy in forensics get together with the lead detective. They rely so much on each other, but is it really going to work? Is this a workplace thing? Does it work outside the workplace? I don't know. It's odd, but I see it a lot in crime procedurals.
Is the NSA going to kill Chuck or are they not?
Exactly. And will they? I don't know. I
You,
don't
I don't
know.
know. Find out next week.
We'll find out next week. That's always the case too. I have to say that one of the shows that I watch that I loved so much, Evil, which is moving into its season 4, which is super exciting. Um, did something really interesting with the will they or won't they, because the two protagonists, Kristen and David, they did get together, but then they got together and it was like immediately they both realized that it was a bad thing, that it didn't work for them. And they keep chasing that high. And it prolongs that sort of like push pull agony, and it's really brilliantly done. As far as the relationship between the two of them, it's so well maintained. I really love that. Um,
Like
okay.
Rachel and Joey, they should never have got together.
Yeah, because then it just ruined whatever comedic tension they had together. It just stopped. Yeah, I don't like that at all. It doesn't.
Mm-mm.
None of that makes me feel very good. Um, okay. I'm going to talk about one more because this is also one that I really truly love, and I wish that there were more of them, but there really aren't very many. Actually, let me talk about one other first. Let's talk about the rescue romance. Um, the rescue romance is sort of akin to the chivalric romance, except the rescue romance kind of just like dives right in there. There's no putting the woman or the man on a pedestal. There's no skirting the issue and claiming true love and I'll do anything that it takes to win you. The rescue romance is just you sweep in and you basically rescue someone from some terrible situation, and then they fall in love with you. And Rapunzel is a great that's a great one. You know, there is this idea that if you rescue someone that you will somehow kindle romantic feelings from or for them. I don't know how I feel about that. How do you feel about that?
I guess it makes sense. Adrenaline, maybe. You hear a lot about. I hate to get dark, but people from the Holocaust seem to get with a lot of GIs,
Hmm.
like people
I
that
mean,
rescued them.
I'm thinking like Little Mermaid does it, where Ariel saves Eric, and somehow that turns into the setup for romance. Um, Rapunzel definitely does it. What's another good one? Um, I'm trying to think if there's another.
Grey's
The, it,
Anatomy.
oh, yeah, I was gonna say that who else does that? Who did this really well was the show. What the heck was the name of that show? The one where they were ER. Um, man, they had so many of those where people find out the worst news ever and then fall in love with the person who basically saves them from death. That was big. And sometimes it doesn't really work, right? Because just because somebody rescues you doesn't mean that they actually feel anything for you. But it's amazing how often we feel that when somebody saves us from something, we immediately start to feel this close bond and kinship with them. It's an
Well,
interesting idea.
the adrenaline thing makes sense then because if you're saving a different person every week, you're going to fall in love with a different person every week.
It's true, and I imagine that, especially with this trope, that writers really sometimes just let things kind of go. Let the characters just kind of be who they are, because at the heart of it, if you're going to fall in love with a number of people over a good period of time, you sort of just have to like throw caution to the wind and just let things happen.
And they have to happen pretty quickly in order to like change our minds quickly.
And they do. That's right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times rescue romances do not end with the happily ever after. Mostly romantic rescues lead in the downfall of one of them because the rescue either wasn't supposed to happen or it happened and the other person really, he's just not that into you. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um okay, so the one that I'm going to close out the show with is this one. Hold on a second. Let me move this over here. Okay. Uh, so have you ever experienced a romance that feels like it is just sort of off to the side, maybe not really part of the main story? Just yeah, it's kind of mentioned here and there. Um this one always makes me laugh a little bit because I love to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's called the side quest romance. And side quest romances are super interesting to me because it's not that they're saying that you're the side chick or the side guy, or no, it's not like that. What they're saying is the romance is not important enough to have its own main storyline, but it's important enough to the story that you need to sort of mention it. And this kind of trope is actually interesting, I think, for us when we're watching it, because do we experience those things sometimes? Do we have sort of like love feelings for people that we don't tell them? And they are sort of a part of our lives, but they don't warrant, or they can't warrant going after. So they don't become part of the main storyline. I have such mixed feelings on this. I like the idea that you can have something that, a show, a story that is concerned with romance, but not that's all it is. Like the characters have such depth and so many things to do that the romance becomes, even when it's important, it's not the it isn't the defining factor of the character. And I'm going to call out Wheel of Time on this one because I feel like Wheel of Time, there are some characters that obviously the main, some main character arcs, the romance is like, yeah, this is the most important thing. But then there are many other characters in Wheel of Time where there's romance and it's steamy and it's hot and it's cool to be a part of it, but it's definitely not the main product of the character arc. And I did really like that. I like when I see that it's real, that there is something there. Do you have any side quest romance sort of likes in terms of TV tropes?
I really like Dwight and Angela, and also Dina and the the guy that she ended up with. What, I can't remember his name.
Okay, because I know who you're talking about, just so that everybody knows, tell us the TV show that they are from, because that I think is a really good one.
Um, which one? The Superstar one?
Right, the Superstore first.
So yeah, so Superstore, I think Dina and Garrett are amazing. So basically they're both just very sarcastic characters and on the surface hate each other, but they really like each other.
Right.
And so it's like one of those situations when they get together, it's kind of nuts, but it's also kind of perfect.
And it doesn't take up a lot of the main story
No,
time because it is just sort of, it's there. And
right.
when you can see it, it's kind of cool, but it's really not, we don't call attention to it.
And we don't like go every week. We're not going, I wonder if they're going to get together.
Right.
You're like, you know what? When they're together, that's cool. But when they're not, we're not thinking about it.
Right, right. Yeah, that I think that actually is a good one. That's a really good one. I was trying to think if there was like any kind of big side quest shows. Wheel of Time definitely comes to mind. Um, And it's hard because to kind of close out this segment, and literally, I'm not kidding. If you look at the number of tropes that are listed in any sort of semblance of formality, there are probably 100 or 200. There's a lot. Um, and they run the gamut from office romances to enemies to age gap romances, silly rabbit romances. There are so many. But the thing that I always come back to about all of these romance tropes is that human beings are continually trying to evolve our thinking in terms of what we believe romance should be. And when we begin to deconstruct the elements of our entertainment around our romantic TV tropes, we really get a wider picture of how human beings behave both with each other and in all kinds of experiences where romance plays a part. And this has been true for probably since we've been walking around as human beings. We find things that we declare are romantic, and then we attach either a symbolic meaning to them, or we develop a ritual out of them, or whatever. This is how we continue to grow. And I love that our entertainment keeps pushing all of these boundaries, because even if that particular trope about getting flowers and then feeling as if that's going to do the trick and you're going to fall in love with somebody, even if that's not my trope, which it might be to anybody out there who wants to send me flowers, um it
You can buy
it
yourself flowers.
it is this is true, but I don't really want to fall in love with myself. I'm good, thanks. um but it is a thing that we can continue to talk about, evolve our thinking on, and realize that we're all so different when it comes to what we want in either a potential partner or in just the romantic feel of a relationship. For some people, a long distance relationship can be amazing, and for other people, no. You absolutely have to be with that person every single day. uh, it doesn't matter, I think, is sort of where I'm going with this. What you think your perfect romance is, we have so much to choose from on TV, in our streaming services, from our movies, to give us the wide variety of different ideas. Here's what we love and don't love. These are all really cool ideas. I had a great time talking about them. Betty, I want to thank you so much for joining the podcast tonight. I had a really good time. I hope that you have a wonderful Valentine's Day, despite the fact that you are waiting for your partner across seas. Just makes it feel that much more special and important and forlorn. We'll all, be rooting for your story to go through, so we can all read about it at some point. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Tell us how we can find you on social media.
You can find me at TikTok at Betty Chitty Bang Bang.
Okay, I love that. And if you haven't seen Betty's TikTok channel, sometimes Betty gets a bit spicy. It's pretty cool. I do love the fact that you take no guff from any troll. That's super cool.
I mean, they're not really important, so because they don't even know them. So what do I care?
It's true. It's true. But it is, sometimes it's fun to hear someone respond to troll like behavior with, just laying down the facts. I like it. You can find me in a number of ways. First, you can always hop over to my website, moviesandmeals.com, where you might find a recipe about any one of the particular tropes that we just talked about tonight. You also might find alien eggs or, Babe's shepherd pie. Who knows? You could find anything over there. We have a great time making that website, and I hope you all like it too. You can join me on Wednesday nights for 10 to 1. Yes, 10 to 1, the podcast where my producer and I go through a list of movies that center around a theme. It's always a fun time. We always have great stuff to talk about. The movies are great. The discussion is great. Join us for that. This week is going to be, I am not going to say whimsicality. Well, I guess I already did. Uh, this week we are actually counting down the movies that we feel represent the way we want to be romanced. So yeah, that should be that should be really interesting. Can't wait to hear what Josh has to say on this one. You can also join me on Thursday nights when we do Talking the Last of Us. Talking the Last of Us is the Last of Us podcast where we go through episodically each week to discuss the show, the game, the characters, the costumes, the sets, the everything. It's been really cool. I've had a really good time so far with it. Hopefully, this week we will be talking a little bit more in depth about Joel and Ellie's journey and what that really means. It's been great. I'm super excited about this one. And let's see, is that it? And then you can always join us here on Tuesday nights for TV dinners. I hope you all had a great time. I did too. Don't forget what I said about being a secret admirer. I am definitely one of yours. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week. I'll see you soon.